As we told you at the top of this newscast, the Supreme Court will hear arguments on two cases that could change the lives of millions of gay and lesbian couples.
To discuss the cases and their implications, we've invited constitutional law professor Donald Downs to join us today. Welcome back to Live at 5.
Oh, thank you.
Briefly, what are these two cases? They're two separate cases.
Right. Well, there's a case in California involving Proposition 8, which was passed in November 2008, which defined marriage as between a man and a woman. And that was a way of getting around a California Supreme Court decision which had broadened the definition before that. And the issue there is whether or not that violates the Equal Protection Clause of the federal Constitution. And then there's a case involving DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, which was passed back in 1996, at that time with a large majority, including Bill Clinton, signing it, which does two things. One, it says that states may not have to adopt the definition of marriage from other states. And that's really not that unusual, because that's the way things were done before that. The real key in the case, part of this being litigated, is Section 3, which involves a federal definition of marriage as between a man and a woman, which would have implications for Social Security benefits, tax benefits, death benefits, and things like that.
Nowadays, I mean, a new CNN poll just came out that showed 53% of Americans support same-sex marriage.
Yeah,
so
there's been a big change.
Does a public opinion change like that, sort of? Could it? I mean, how much pressure?
Right. Well, technically, it's not supposed to influence the court.
Right.
It's supposed to look at the law. But there has been research. You know, the courts do understand what's going on at the times. The Constitution is something that it has its basic principles, which are meant to be abided by, but it also has to sort of take into consideration certain changes in society. It's kind of a balance, I guess. But for the most part, the question is whether or not the court's going to look at the Equal Protection Clause as protecting gay marriage.
But and it's not just public opinion. I mean, this is the president, this is Hillary Clinton. These are some higher ups here who are.
Yeah, and interesting, you know, Bill Clinton signed the DOMA Act back in '96, and now he's come out against it. President Obama was in favor of traditional marriage until just recently. So there's been really a sea change that's been going on. And when you look at younger people, the difference between older people and younger people overwhelmingly support gay marriage as a right.
So what could we expect for the next 2 days? This is not going to be the final decision by any means. What's going to happen?
Well, two things. First of all, if the court deals with the case on the merits, does DOMA, does Prop 8 violate the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution? And the court could look at that in a more aggressive way and say that, you know, gays are now protected by the Equal Protection Clause in all other cases, or they could just look at it in a narrow way and say that these particular measures single out gays, and that's unfair. The other issue is whether or not the plaintiffs in the case even have standing to bring the case about. Under federal law, under Article 3 of the Constitution, you have to have a real case in controversy, meaning that you yourself have to be affected by the law or the policy. And in California, the state has refused to defend the law, and so they're allowing proponents of the proposition to bring the case, but they themselves may not be directly impacted by the case, by Proposition 8. And with DOMA, it's 3 members of a committee that was set up by the Republican Congress to litigate the case on behalf of the law. The federal government now says the law is unconstitutional. So under traditional standing doctrine in the Constitution, the proponents of Prop 8 and of DOMA may not even be able to bring the case forward, which would mean the court would dismiss the cases.
And we would know that by the end of this week?
No, probably wouldn't know that until June.
So.
And even, I mean, this is something they won't be deciding on or making a final decision on.
If they take the case on its merits and look at the substance as an equal protection issue, that would be in June too.
So it's going to be a while.
So all this stuff is going to be talked about by the court between now and then.
We'll have to have you back, Don.
A story we will continue to follow.
Thanks for being with us today.
Sure.